Hannah. I'm a writer. You can find my short story collection, Little Birds, on Amazon in ebook and paperback, and right here in my hand. Speaking of short stories, so a few weeks ago I made that video where I showed every draft of a flash fiction as I wrote it, and today we're kind of doing the same thing but for a short story. So I just wanted to show how the process might be different between a shorter flash fiction and kind of a longer piece. And this time I kept track of the critique I was given as well, and I'm going to go through and write the second draft live. So the working title for this is called Home. The first draft I wrote in a writing sprint. I'm not exactly sure where the idea for this one came from. Like, I just opened my document and was like, I need to write a story. And it just fell out exactly as it is. So I didn't really have like an inspiration for it. I've just always liked the idea of a character who's like drastically different than who they were at a certain time, and then they go back to that time, whether it be like a place or a person, and you can see how their past still affects them despite like the growth they may have had elsewhere. This is the first draft I wrote in that writing sprint. So a writing sprint is where you just like set a timer and just write, and you don't read it back and you don't judge any of the words. You just write as many as you can without editing. So this is an extremely rough draft that I just foisted onto my critique partners. Thanks for tolerating me, guys. Eli grips his steering wheel and lets his throat burn, rattling breaths clawing to his lungs, vision tunneled. He lets the panic tear through until his phone dings. 10 minutes over. He drags in a deep lungful, holds for 5, release for 7. After a few rounds of breathing, Eli's vision clears. He slides calm across his face and his phone into his jacket pocket, pulling the keys from the ignition with his other hand and stepping out of the car. He beeps it locked and crosses the street with swift, confident steps. The house is brittled, slouching with age and neglect and spite. He jams the key into the deadbolt and yanks, but the lock doesn't disengage. He yanks again. Wrong key. Eli's hands stammer, flipping through the keys on his ring before he drops into the porch and winces, eyes flicking to the curtain window like she'd be watching him fumble. He swipes the keys and shoves in the right key, slipping inside. It's a little repetitive. Light streams through thin slits of crooked blinds, shooting beams of white into the dust Eli's entrance unsettled. The air swirls like snowfall. He leaves his shoes on the rack by the door and pads through the foyer, pressing the balls of his feet into faded floral. The carpet feels dirty through his socks. He should have kept his shoes on. She can't fuss him for it now. But he keeps walking. The house breathes, calmer and steadier than Eli. He feels her eyes watching through every turn of pattern in the wallpaper. He buttons his suit jacket and forces himself not to walk faster. His phone rings full volume. Shit, he hisses, heart beating against his ribs. Hello? He answers, recognizing the bite in his voice, but not as his own. Eli, Kennedy says, pausing. You okay? He relaxes his grip and drops his shoulders. Yeah, I'm fine. What's up? Did you make it? Yes. I could have sent another agent. It doesn't have to be you. It does. Kennedy inhales. Back out at any time. It really isn't a problem. Check in later? Right. Eli hangs up and lets his eyes go out of focus until he enters the home office. The rest of the house had fallen into disrepair by her standards, and this room shows the same negligence, but it's tidy. Coats of dust shroud the furniture, cobwebs dripping from the ceiling fan blades. The door swept a half moon of clean hardwood into the gray layer. She hasn't been in this room in years. The organization and rigidity of her lifestyle pre-illness shines through in the perfectly straight book collections lining the walls, the precisely placed office supplies on her desk. He pulls a drawer open to reveal a flawless filing system. This should be quick and easy work. There's a weight on his back while he shuffles through papers. He can't shake the feeling that he shouldn't be in here. He isn't allowed. She's dead, he says out loud. He pulls the house deed from a folder and sets it aside. She's dead, and she isn't coming back. The smell of calamine lotion breezes past and disappears. Eli's head snaps up. He left the door open. There must be a draft from one of the other rooms. Her bedroom, maybe. He watches the hallway and imagines her walking past, shuffling in her slippers, hunched toward the floor. He only visited the hospital once. We're keeping her comfortable. She's a sweet woman, the nurse smiled. Eli stood over the bed and watched. She was small and wrinkled, sunk into the comforter. Do you want a moment alone? No, he said quickly. I'm leaving. He walked away, not feeling the vindication he thought he would, to see her weak, to see her helpless. He wished he hadn't looked back. Her eyes were slit open, watching him leave. Eli blinks. The hall is empty. He slips the papers into a yellow folder and tucks it under his arm. There's nothing else for him here. He unlocks his car from across the street, crossing to it in long strides, his spine stretching, chin raising. The sun is warm on his shoulders, and he won't look back. But he slips behind the wheel, and he does look back. The house slouches a little further, shrinking into the dirt. So that's very clearly a first draft. As I was writing it, I was still, deciding on the tone. But I already have feedback from my critique partners, so I'm going to go over that and then do a live write for draft 2. I'm afraid. So Gloria says to replace and let's with while, fixes the let's rep, and adds some lack of agency to increase panic in this little bit. I agree with her that let's Let's was pretty passive, but I also don't like that phrasing. Micah doesn't like that phrasing either. Cool. So Micah thinks I should restructure the whole first sentence, and I agree. Like, you know that feel when you consciously do this? This is praise, just in case that was unclear. Thanks, Gloria. Pulling keys from the ignition with his other hand and stepping out of his car. Feel like this could be shorter while he gets out of the car, maybe. Pulling the keys out is sort of implied. I don't agree with that. I liked having the, like, intentionality of it, since he's pulling himself out of an anxiety attack. He's, like, focusing on everything that he does to distract from the panic. Beeps it locked. Still funny to me. Beep, beep. I like the momentum this sentence picks up. It reflects how he thinks it's no big deal, but it balloons because trauma. Cool. She doesn't like the word disengaged. WC means word choice. So Micah has me replacing the keys on his with his key. Gloria says he flips through his key. I disagree. I think the keys on his ring works fine. He flips through his key ring. Oh. Ooh, the girls are fighting and dropping them. Something about before makes it sound like he meant to. Micah's editing all my stuff up. Gloria said, which means that she likes this. Micah said spooky, which means that he likes it. I like that they're, like, making suggestions, and they're just like, rewrite this shit, Hannah, which is fair. Gloria has me changing air to dust, but I have dust right here. Probably gonna rewrite the whole line anyway. Love this because it was def a rule, and he still can't shake it. Okay, I'm glad he said that. Whenever you're critiquing people's stories, it's great to leave comments with, like, what your assumptions or interpretations are of it through your first read, so I'm glad that this was conveying, and I'm glad he said it. Gloria added carpet to this line and changed the carpet to it. She can't fuzz important. This is Micah realizing he was right. Congrats, Micah. Gloria says, which means that she likes it. Kind of want there to be a clear objective from the very start. You do a really good job in places like this of capturing the conflict, his past trauma, and I can appreciate there's an element of intrigue, not knowing what he needs to do or what's going on, but I think I want to know earlier. Okay, Gloria's not sure what this means. Like, he doesn't recognize himself when he's being mean. Or is it like the bite that his mom had in her voice, because that fucks? I can see that, but I would like it slightly reworded. Micah is correct. That is exactly what I meant. I did not know if it would convey. I'm glad it did to one person. I don't get the impression that the rest of the house is untidy, but I also can't read. So yeah, basically just need to do a better job of describing the house, because I also couldn't decide here, like, if she was in a hospital before she died or if she was, like, had home care. So at first my idea was that she was living in the house until she died, and she just, like, stopped using these rooms, and the rest of the house, like, she couldn't keep up and keep it as tidy, but this was a room that she hadn't been in, so it was still, like, in order. But I ended up putting her in a hospital. So we'll see. Slice through this tender steak and dip it in A1 sauce. It's so yummy. Thank you, Micah. Visceral. Feels a little weird. Can't place why. So they don't like the gray layer. I had only put that because I already put coats of dust, so I'll have to rethink that because it's not slapping. Micah made this an italicized thought that's separate. Kind of don't want this thought because it's the only one and it's implied. Yeah, that's how I had it. I love when they disagree with each other. Fight. Fight. There's a weight on his back. I feel like this could be stronger and heavier. It could. That's fair. Gloria said youch, which is always good. That's what I wanted. Gloria said which is good. That's what I wanted. And she said ouch, which is good. That's what I wanted. And she said which is also good because that is also what I wanted. Really want to keep this section because it got me good, and I don't want to say expand it because I don't know that it needs to be longer. You are concise as always, but as little as this section is in a bigger story, I want, like, more IDK. I mean, like, yeah, it's really short, but also, like, he just looks in the hallway and remembers this and then comes back. I don't think it needs to be longer, but I'll think about it. Micah cut the second to see her because it's repetitive, but, like, that was a stylistic choice. Is it a stylistic choice I'm going to stick with? I don't know, but it was intentional, so we'll see. Micah said ow, which is perfect. So many very complicated feelings are captured in very simple ways, and that's the joy of short stories, and I'm so thank you, Gloria. Him saying he won't look back and then looking back, felt that. Unsure how I feel about the ending. I think it's in the right place, but maybe worded slightly different. Agree it could hit harder. It goes from, like, oh yes, he leaving, he confident, but then, like, a dark vibe sets in as he looks back, and that's good. But just think it can be expanded upon to be stronger, still slaps, and can we get a hashtag hugs for Eli in the comments below? Thanks. So Gloria wants something bigger to happen, or for Eli to change or overcome something, or, like, his failure to overcome it to be a bigger deal. I'll think about it. Hello, friends. Waited a few days, and now we're going to write home, draft 2. Staccato. Erratic. Oops, I spelled erratic wrong. That was embarrassing. Rattle his lungs, burn his throat. So most of writing is just staring at a sentence, thinking of what you want to say, and trying to figure out how to say it in an effective way. And it's hard to do. So I want him to just be like sitting here with this anxiety attack. Watches panic ripple through tunneled vision. And then, have you ever been like on a pier at like a beach and you look through the cracks in between the boards and you see the waves? That's what... I want him to be kind of like super successful now, so I'll put his steering wheel. What about like the steering wheel of his, what's a nice car? Have I ever seen a car before? Expensive car. Ask Andrew. I'm just gonna text my friend who knows some more things than me. I feel like this is kind of enough to express that anxiety attack, and then he can kind of wake up from it. His phone dings. 10 minutes are over. And Micah didn't like beeped. So like I want this to seem like he's pulling himself together and like remembering who he is and what he's built for himself, and he's above all this now, but then turns out he's not. Yeah, brittled probably isn't a word, but we're gonna make it a word. Okay, and we need to get rid of the key repetition in the next paragraph. My eyes flicked in the curtain window like I don't know, something's still weird there, but we'll worry about that later. I also have a lot of repetition of like he and his throughout. I have to fix that. Into the floating particles, Eli's entrance unsettled, because Gloria wanted dust in the next sentence. So dust swirls like snowfall. I think I'm going to leave this paragraph how it is, except I'm going to make black wool socks. Just to make it more impactful that his socks are getting super icky. Heart beating against his ribs could be a little cliche, but I'll leave it for now. Hello? He answers. I kind of want to hint in this dialogue that like his work position is above doing this, and he's doing this like completely of his own volition. This is below your pay grade anyway. Or something like that. There was some confusion about me saying the gray layer because I was trying not to be repetitive with the word dust. I think I'll just take out the part about the dust on the furniture and have like room and years. The door swept a half moon of clean hardwood and the gray carpet of dust. Perfectly straight and categorized book collection lining the walls, precisely placed office supplies on her desk. He pulls a drawer open to reveal a flawless filing system. This should be easy and quick. Whatever. There's a weight on his back while he shuffles through papers, and Micah said that wasn't heavy enough. And then I had, he can't shake the feeling that he shouldn't be in here. He isn't allowed. I think I'll just put, he isn't allowed in the office. I had, Eli stood over the bed and watched. She was small and wrinkled, sunk into the comforter. I feel like that needs more. We need a simile here. What's our simile, fam? Andrew said the car can be a Porsche 911. Thanks, Andrew. Y'all go follow my boy on Twitter at bud_bro. Tell him he did a nice job knowing about cars that exist. Eli stood over the bed and watched. She was small and wrinkled, sunk into the comforter like... Okay, you see, what I want to convey is that she looked like a raisin in a pile of marshmallow sauce, and you know what I'm not going to say? Any of that. I kind of want to go back to the waves earlier, like a... Like, you know, the first couple seconds where a stone is sinking and it's just like, oh, okay, and you know it's gonna disappear forever. That don't work, though. I don't know. Too hard into the cushion. There's no raisins involved. We'll return to that later. Okay, and then right after that, the nurse says, do you want a moment alone? I feel like we need a sound. Machine beeped slow or something. Yeah, I want a grosser word than dripping, but I don't know what it is yet. I'm gonna put the original one that I had right here for you to see. Okay, but he slips behind the wheel and he does look back. The house slouches a little further, shrinking into the dirt. Wheel and unclenches the folder, dropping it in the passenger seat and pulling from the curb. But he does look back. The house slouches a little further, shrinking into the dirt. I'm trying to think of what moment could happen afterward that kind of shows that he's, starting to move past it, but maybe I don't want him to. I could have him, like, drop the folder at the end of it, but I like this as a last line. So yeah, that's mostly the same. So not a ton changed in that draft, but I sent draft 2 to Chris, and they gave me some feedback. I usually use Chris as like my last critique round before I send it to beta readers because they're my editor and they're really good with imagery and language, which are kind of like the finer details of a story. I also give Chris the feedback that I got from other beta readers or critique partners that I either haven't found a way to fix or I just don't agree with, to see what they think. Since Chris is like my critique partner with the most writing and editing experience, I save them for the end, which is how you should structure your like critique process if you have multiple writing partners. If you give it all to them at once, then they've all seen the story in every step, so this way I get it kind of cleaned up and then I can use like my super experienced writer to get the finer details of it. And they haven't seen the story before, so they aren't going into it with a bias. So we're gonna look at Chris's edits, and I'll just edit as we go because it'll probably be super small changes, and watching me live write the second draft wasn't very interesting. Ooh, he fancy. He show is. Love these words beside each other. I knew you would. GTFO, this is such a pretty image. I don't know how I feel about lapping though, because this image feels calming with that verb, unlike the rest of the sentence. Do I want it to be calming? Sloshing is kind of gross. Licking is also kind of gross. I don't think gurgle really describes what, like, lapping is what it's doing. You can try sloshing. The ocean sloshing when he's a kid, his eye pressed to the hole in the pier plank. It sounds fine. His phone dings, 10 minutes are over, awkwardly worded. We just do like the 10 minutes over. That might be better. Whenever I edit something, I just fixed. Thought he was driving. I thought he was panicking while driving. This threw me for a loop. I don't know that I hate people thinking that he was driving. That kind of adds to the urgency. Is that an issue? Oh, look, it's me. I like this, but I also kind of thought this was going to be a snow globe reference, like a moment captured in glass, but I loves it. I mean, I feel like that is a snow globe image, so if you want to project that onto it, that's fine. Love that he takes his shoes off. This is cool and sad. Thank you. Gets out baseball bat and starts banging it on the desk. I love turn of pattern so much. Whenever Chris likes something that I said, they beat something with a baseball bat. You're doing fabulously with showing how stiff and uncomfortable he is in all his movements. Solid and puts the feeling through well. I almost straightened up myself. I didn't because I'm wearing pajamas and eating chili, but I almost did. Cool. And stop. This is so good inside, which is good. Bitch. Why I read these two lines with a British accent. Kennedy can have a British accent. That's cool. Oop, no thank you. Got a new business idea. Every time you write an image so pretty that I want to tape to my wall, I'll charge everyone in my life $20, including you. Relatable feeling all around. Cool. Imagine dying and leaving behind the smell of calamine lotion. My ghost will smell like chili and fried chicken. That's a better legacy. That will be $20. Okay, Chris likes this. Cool. No, thank you. Good, it's creepy. Feel like I want just another couple lines showing him different from how he was inside the house. Unlocks his car from across the street, crossing to it in long strides. His spine stretching, chin rising. The sun is warm on his shoulders and he won't look back. What about like his boot heels click the pavement? Just like to settle it in a sound and give it a second longer. I thought this was going to circle back to when he looked back and the mom was watching him, reminded me of the cracked blinds. It was. Does that not convey? Man. Also like that the house is shrinking to him fading. He's leaving all that behind. I dig that. Okay, so Chris gets it. They didn't get that it is a reference to the mom watching. Reminded me of the cracked blinds at the beginning. But he does look back. The house slouches a little further, shrinking into the dirt. Slitted blinds. Watch him leave. Is that too overt? But like, if Chris didn't get it, most people won't get it. It to be a callback. Hashtag symbolism. Does the line I added make it too overt? So we discussed a few of those things that I still couldn't figure out, and now here's the current draft. Eli grips the steering wheel of his Porsche 911. Staccato, erratic breaths rattle his lungs. I thought I said erotic a second ago. I said erratic, right? Staccato, erratic breaths rattle his lungs, burn his throat. He watches panic ripple in waves through tunneled vision, like the ocean sloshing when he was a kid with his eye pressed to a hole in the pier planks. His phone dings, 10 minutes over. He drags in a deep lungful, holds for 5 seconds, releases for 7. After a few rounds of breathing, Eli's vision clears. He slides calm across his face and his phone into his jacket pocket, pulling the keys from the ignition with his other hand and stepping out of his car. He clicks it locked and crosses the street with swift, confident steps. The house is brittled, slouching with age and neglect and spite. He jams the key into the deadbolt and yanks, but the lock sticks. He yanks again, wrong one. His hands stammer as he flips through his keyring. He drops him to the porch and winces, eyes flicking to the curtain window like she'd be watching him fumble. He swipes the keys and shoves in the right one, slipping inside. Light streams through thin slits of crooked blind, shooting beams of white into the floating particles. Eli's entrance unsettled. Dust swirls like snowfall. He leaves his shoes on the rack by the door and pads through the foyer, pressing the balls of his feet into faded floral. The carpet feels dirty under his black wool socks. He should have kept his shoes on. She can't fuss him for it now, but he keeps walking. The house breathes calmer and steadier than Eli. He feels eyes watching through every turn of pattern in the wallpaper. He buttons his suit jacket and forces himself not to walk faster. Eli lets his eyes go out of focus until he enters the home office. The rest of the house had fallen into disrepair by her standards, and this room showed the same negligence, but it's tidy. Cobwebs drip from the ceiling fan blades, and the door swept a half moon of clean hardwood and a gray carpet of dust. She hasn't been in this room in years. A perfectly straight, categorized book collection lines the walls on floating shelves, and precisely placed office supplies dot the mahogany desk. He pulls a drawer open to reveal a flawless filing system. There's a weight pressing against his chest and between his shoulder blades while he shuffles through papers. He isn't allowed in the office. She's dead, he says out loud. He pulls the house deed from a folder and sets it aside. She's dead and she isn't coming back. The smell of calamine lotion breezes past and disappears. Eli's head snaps up. The door hangs open. He watches the hallway and imagines her walking past, shuffling in her slippers, hunched toward the floor. He only visited the hospital once. We're keeping her comfortable. She's a sweet woman, the nurse smiled. Eli stood over the bed and watched. She was small and wrinkled, sunk into the comforter like a fabric pin shoved too hard into a cushion. A machine beeped slow. "Do you want a moment alone?" the nurse asked. "No, I don't," he snapped, recognizing the bite in his voice but not as his own. "I'm going," he said, softer. He wished he hadn't looked back. Her eyes were slit open, watching him leave. Eli blinks. The hall is empty. He slips the papers into a yellow folder and tucks it under his arm. There's nothing else for him here. He unlocks his car from the porch, crossing to it in long strides, his spine stretching, chin rising. His boot heels click the pavement. The sun is warm on his shoulders, and he won't look back. He slips behind the wheel and unclenches the folder, dropping it in his passenger seat and pulling from the curb. But he does look back. Slit blinds watch him, and the house slouches a little further, shrinking to the dirt. So the biggest change I made was removing that phone call with Kennedy. That's not something I would have done without feedback, because in my head I'd settled that he was a real estate lawyer, and that felt important to me. Chris suggested cutting it, and I was like, oh, I guess that detail isn't actually relevant to the story, which is why it's really important to have other people looking at your writing, because you're too close to the story, and you're just gonna miss stuff like that because it's already settled. If you want a professional critique or a workshop or an edit, Chris and Gloria both provide services, and I will link them in the description. I also offer critiques and workshops if you didn't know that. So now I'll probably just let this story chill for a week or so before I revisit it and see if there's anything else that I want to change before I send it off to beta readers. If you want to see a video on how to recruit and utilize beta readers and how to interpret and use beta feedback, let me know in a comment. That's all I got on this story. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thank you to my patrons for sponsoring this video. I upload every Thursday, so hit the notification bell so you're not missing anything. Yeah. Happy holidays. See you next week. Bye.